What are mistakes I made as a new teacher? Well, since I've been teaching for like 1,000 years, there are a bunch. And what I'm talking about today can help anybody who's just starting. I hope so. By the way, this is on sciencebysinai.com, my blog, so you can always go and check those out. I'm embarrassed to say my first one. And my first one was I became friends with my first to 8th grade bunch of kids. I was 21, 22 years old. They were 8th grade. They were about 14 and the same size as me. And they were gathering at my desk and asked me all important questions, personal questions and stuff. And I was just swept away by that. And then they started acting like little jerks in the classroom. And I had zero discipline with them. And it became a problem. And I vowed never to do it again. I was a little bit better, better and better. And then as you get older and they become like the same age as your own kids, or, the gap becomes bigger. But really got to stay on top of that because it's easy to do. It's easy to do. They're like your number one fan club in the beginning. The second one was I didn't get to know the kids that well. Like I thought I knew them. I knew them really well in my classroom. I knew all their academics and such. But then I went to a talent show at the end of the school year, and there's this kid's playing the piano really well. This kid's doing the violin really well. This one's a magician. And I had no idea. I had no idea that they were so talented. So I really I started doing surveys in the beginning of the school year so that I can get to know different aspects of their lives and then bring it up throughout the school year, which is fun. The other one was relationships with fellow teachers, fellow people in the building. It was a whole bunch of us. We were all about the same age. It felt like we were all like the bestest buddies down in the faculty lounge and stuff like that. But then we started talking telling each other personal things. And every once in a while, that personal thing would come back to me and I'd be like, wait a minute, what? And I started realizing that they're not really friends, sadly. So there was a very big difference between a work friend and an associate and someone who's truly a friend. It really nailed it home when I left that school after many years, and two of those people, reached out to me for maybe 2 years, and then they kind of vanished. And it was only because there was Facebook. So when I went into my new school, I started like, okay, I'm gonna be really careful now. I'm gonna be careful what I say about my personal life, who I'm really close with. And you never ever want to talk with a colleague, no matter how much you think that they're, trustworthy, about anything negative about the administration, because that will somehow, some way get back, sadly. The way I classify a real friend would be someone who we invite to go to dinner with our husbands, or we go to a barbecue together, or we go down to the beach together. Those are the people that I value as true friends that started as being colleagues in school. The next one is relationships with parents. It never gets better. I've been teaching forever and they are tough. And I remember I was 23 years old. And we were having parent conferences, and this mother was saying, my daughter never gets anything but A's in science, and you gave her a B+. And she picked up a book and she threw it at me. Yeah. So luckily we were having conferences in the cafeteria, and all these teachers came and rushed and tried to help. But really? And I haven't had anything physical like that for many years, but I've definitely had people screaming and upset. And it's usually because they weren't on top of what was going on anyway. So I have to tell you, even with all these years of teaching, 30 plus years, you can still get butterflies when it's time for a parent conference, especially if it's not going to be that great. Now on my blog, I have a whole post on how to deal with difficult parents, because I've learned over time. The biggest thing to remember is that honestly, it's usually not personal. It's usually you're like the last straw with whatever stress they have in their life. So if you put that into your brain, that they don't hate you personally, they're just annoyed that you're like one last thing on their list of things that are driving them crazy, and it makes it just a little bit easier to move on. Next thing, administration relationship. I needed to learn, it took me a long time to learn the word no. Do you believe that when I first started teaching in my first couple of years, I was coaching soccer. They had me coaching soccer because someone asked me, and I'm like, I was like a sub coach. Never did anything like that before. So, I mean, I learned a lot, but it was time consuming and annoying. All kinds of little things like, could you draw? Because I was an artist. Can you draw for this? Can you do that? Like, I was just always, oh, okay. Just never learned the word no. When I got in my new school, I ended up saying yes to doing a big part of graduation. It used to make me a nervous wreck. All of June, all I could think about, instead of thinking about how I'm about to have a wonderful summer off, was how nervous I was to get past that date of graduation. So finally, I learned to say no. The science fair was another one. I was like, enough already. We did that for years and years and years and years and years and years. And it just consumed me. And I finally had to learn to say no. And it took a lot of courage to walk in and say to my administrator, no, it's not happening anymore. Which leads me to two other things with administration, and then I'll be almost done. The administration, you must keep them on top of things. So every single solitary communication you have, even if you feel like it's minor, that something happened in your classroom and you send something home to the parents, you must CC on the email your principal. There's nothing worse than a screaming parent who jumps right above you and goes right to the administration about a topic that your administration has never heard about ever. And now, where are you? You're put on the defensive because you never brought that topic to your principal, and they knew nothing about it. So now they have to come to you and say, what is this? And try to come to the truth, which sadly that's the way some things are approached sometimes. It's gotten better over time, at least in my school it did. But data. Write down everything, document everything, write up everything, and send it, and make sure your administration is part of it. Even if you feel like you're the most annoying human being on the planet, do it. Okay, which leads me to the next thing is make sure that you are organized and staying on top of everything. Planning, I didn't know how to plan when I first started teaching. I had no idea how to plan. No one taught, what are those stupid things we learned in college with those long lesson plans with the objectives and this, what the heck was that? When you're in the trenches and you're teaching back to back, especially I was I'm still a middle school science teacher, and it's just one class after another. I don't have time to write these long things, and I don't have time to be pulling through them and seeing what I'm supposed to be doing next. So you need to come up with a system. I use Trello, which is an app. I have other videos about it, but I can go into that if you need to know. And I go home when the kids go home. That's right. It took me years to get to that point where I have my lesson plans done. I tweak them year to year. I add new things throughout the year, and then I go home. That I'm not spending. I used to spend my entire Sunday. My husband used to work on Sundays. I used to spend my entire Sunday from morning to night grading papers, lesson plans, digging through books, digging through videos, trying to find things. It was insane. So you need to come up with a system, and if you need help, I can certainly help. You are at a point where you're literally like plug and play, like what you're going to do, and it takes you about a half hour to get your week together, and then you go home. It is so powerful. So anyway, those are my biggest mistakes. The biggest mistakes I made. I'm sure there's a gazillion other ones, but the ones I wanted to avoid the most are definitely the relationships and the planning and the organization, because those are the ones that will keep you sane if you develop them early. And how much do we all wish, those that are my age, how much do we wish that we had someone who told us all this from the get-go? So please visit my blog. It's all for middle school science teachers, but it's also a lot of classroom management things for everybody. ScienceBySinai.com. Take care.